Hey, what's going on, Tom?
Jamal.
Welcome. Thank you for joining me, man.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, my brother. And for all of you guys that are just watching with us, I want to let you guys know that Tom is our VP of operations here at EDM. He's the future. He's the man with the plan. He's the one that's going to take us to the promised land. So, Tom, thank you, man.
Thank
Can you just kind of open us up a little bit, give us a little bit about your background, where you come from, what kind of got you here?
Yeah. I born and raised here in Phoenix. My entire professional background is sales. Even prior to professional, I worked in the restaurant industry in college. Got tired of that. Figured I'd flip iPhones one summer. So that was my first foray into negotiating, arbitraging, sales, all of that. So ended up not having to work at the restaurant anymore and just slinging Apple products. And that kind of got me addicted to sales. From there, it's been probably a shorter list of stuff I haven't sold than I have. I've sold lumber, I've sold PEO, payroll, commercial insurance, final expense, Medicare, and now calls and leads. So I'm relatively well versed, and I've, been on the lead buying side actually. Obviously, that's how we met, selling final expense and paying for form fills, and then finding out we could have been paying less for form fills and figured out how to do it on our own. So,
and I think that's kind of a common thread across this whole industry is, everybody's kind of experienced it from one point or another, whether they bought leads, generated leads, or kind of figured out a way to kind of be in the middle of both. And, from selling the products that you sold in the past, like what have you liked about those other sales opportunities and what haven't you liked about them?
There's a lot of uniqueness in each of those verticals. But, further in my career, as I got onto the management side, it seemed that the most valuable thing for any business was actually finding those people to close.
Yeah.
And, specifically the mortgage industry, I was there too. Another thing I didn't mention, but, it became very evident that there was a certain ROI to be had on your better closers, not having them waste time on prospecting. So that's where I really started to see the value that comes into, all right, let's just get these good guys or girls on the phone with people versus having to bang through 500 calls a day to pick out 8-10 people that might want to talk. Yeah. Let's just feed them and let them do what they do best, which is closed. And that was true among pretty much every industry I was in, aside from lumber, which is a little bit niche, but the insurance, any of the insurance spaces, mortgage, did some debt consolidation, debt sales, same thing there. It's like, get people on the phone. And that becomes very worthwhile, having your good people closing, not prospecting.
I believe that. I definitely believe that. Now, in regards to like the transition coming into this industry from like your previous, positions and jobs, like what sparked that want to make that transition?
Yeah.
And, kind of got to give a little bit of context for some of the listeners.
Oh, you? No, it was an interesting transition because it was, when we first reconnected, it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, we were selling the final expense, kind of went our own ways for a few years there. And then when we reconnected, I was somewhat familiar, having spent some time with a very close friend of mine. He had a pay-per-call company where I first learned about it, but I wasn't necessarily on the operations side. So I didn't have that in-depth understanding of really what the business was. I just know, this is cool, and we seem to be doing a lot of stuff and making money, but I didn't know all the X's and O's that necessarily went into it. But then as you started to pull back the curtain a little bit, and I could see what makes it go, the demand, who some of the clientele is, the relationship nature of this business, which I would say is probably my favorite part.
And your superpower.
At times.
Yeah.
Some people would disagree. Some people might agree. But that was a huge draw. And then getting integrated with this team over here as well. It's a great group. So, I can confidently say I made the right call, even though it took a little bit of negotiation back and forth for me to make the jump. But, it seems like a very strong fit.
But let's talk about like the learning curve, because even with your previous experience in this space and kind of being exposed to it at a certain level, like there definitely was a learning curve.
Huge.
To kind of
I mean, most of those industries that I spoke to that I have experience in, as far as prospecting goes, I could pick up any old leads list and just start dialing and make something happen. Here, in my opinion, anyway, prospecting efficiently and resourcefully is the key to creating those good relationships and selling calls and leads.
Now, can you give a couple examples of what that means? Like, what does prospecting resourcefully mean?
Yeah, I mean, I can't hand a sales rep, or I can't take a list of local businesses and just start calling them, talking to the receptionist, asking for the decision maker on who buys leads. Half of them would be like, dude, I have no idea what you're talking about. We don't even do that. So identifying somebody that's worth reaching out to is the first piece of it, but then also understanding who at that business is the person that you're going to have a relationship with is critical. Because even within an organization, outside of very high level folks, there's not going to be a lot of people that are really in tune with that piece, the lead procurement piece of the business. So if you come into sales in this industry and you're one of those folks that's just sheer volume, dial, it can be a challenge. Not that it can't work, but it's
just working hard,
not the most
smart.
Efficient way.
Yeah,
exactly. But if you're heavy on Zoom info, heavy on LinkedIn, cross-referencing everything, shoot, I use Craigslist. I use Indeed to see who's hired. I mean, I use any number of 10 different tools to try and figure out who's worth going after and who I might talk to at a company. And that seems to, it's more of like a scalpel than a, chainsaw.
What's probably the most unexpected thing about this industry that you didn't expect to see or learn that you've been exposed to since you?
I don't know if it's the most unexpected necessarily, but the thing that sticks out the most is everybody knows everybody. So your reputation is beyond gold. You have to really make it a focus to do right by everyone, because if you don't, then a large portion of the industry will know.
Yeah.
And so I try to operate that way regardless. So it's not like I've had to make a shift there, but it was just very apparent and something that I really took to and enjoy.
And you guys, what Tom is talking about specifically is actually a great point. And like what he's actually saying more than anything is like, just imagine a whole pizza, right? And there's a lot of cheese sauce and of course, the actual pizza dough itself. But the actual business is done is what will be considered like the pepperonis that will be on that pizza. It's a very small piece, but they control and kind of dictate everything. And they are pretty much the foundation and the building blocks for how actually this business operates. It's a very small ecosystem. Everybody does know everybody, and your reputation is everything. So, the most important things to always understand is if you do good business, people will always want to do business with you. And, that's common ethos. And I know that's something that you believe in, Tom, and
yeah,
I definitely
100%.
commend that for you. Now, as far as like what you like about the industry, like you kind of give us a couple things that you like.
Yeah, it's fast. That's my, one of the things I learned about myself is those long sales cycles don't do it for me. Like, I for sure have ADD. I don't have much patience. So if I got to nurture something for a year to get it closed, that's a challenge for me. So in this industry, the pace in which things happen it's extremely quick, but I love it. So I would say if there's a single favorite thing aside from the relationship side of the business, the pace in which it operates is fantastic. Also the diversification of industries that we're able to service. It's obviously insurance is huge for us, but we've made a huge push into the mass tort side. I really enjoy that. The home services verticals are fantastic. So I'm kind of like a constant student, and I like learning about all those different businesses, probably as evidenced by me selling 95 different things.
Yeah.
So it's new and different. I don't like to relive, I don't like the Groundhog's Day thing.
Yeah.
So it's very rare to have the same day twice in this industry. There's always, and now there's some stress that comes along with.
That's actually a good point, Tom. That's a really good point. And I think one of the unique things about this business and this industry as a whole, depending on what industries you're going to be operating within, is the fact that you're able to see so many businesses and how they function.
Yeah.
And like, this is kind of where you can see like, oh, this business is successful for this reason.
Right.
Or this business is successful for this reason. And you kind of get a framework for how all these different businesses operate and what their different business models are.
Exactly. And there's like,
yeah.
I mean, there's so many ways I've learned about businesses that I didn't know existed a year ago. And, you know, you see these companies doing something that you never in a million years would have thought of, just making a ton of money. It's cool to see.
Yeah.
It's cool to see. You get to see and meet a lot of entrepreneurial folks, and there's just a lot to be learned.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. Now, aside from all of that, you know, I know we've been cooking up a lot of stuff internally, just to kind of make sure like the next generation that we bring into this business is able to do it bigger and better than us. So like, what type of stuff have we been doing, Tom, that you want to share with the world? And, you know, what do you think it's going to do for them?
Yeah, I think the most exciting piece that we've got in the works is our course. It's essentially informational, educational pieces that can teach this industry to sales folks. I think it's one of those where you can't scroll Instagram without seeing something about wholesaling or e-commerce, and nothing. Those are great businesses. And I know a lot of people that make a lot of money doing it, but this is one that I feel like is drastically overlooked. It doesn't necessarily take a ton of capital if you want to go into brokering calls. Really, the knowledge is gold. If you're able to understand the industry, you can make money at it. Whether that's selling for us as a salesperson or brokering calls from. So I think that educational resource will do a lot for folks who take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot to learn to get into it.
So let's be honest, though.
How
much training and resources did you have when you got started?
Get on the phone with people and set up meetings and figure it out. But I mean, in all honesty, that's the way I kind of requested it be like that. I learned by doing. So, you know, even if you did it's a great, I've read through it. It's awesome. It's like 30 pages. I probably would have skimmed it, but
the ebook.
Yeah, I just skimmed it, but I would have just like started to reach out to people, call them, have the conversations, and learn as I go.
So now let me ask you this: like, learning as you go is an invaluable skill. I think that's probably one of the most, I don't know what the word is specifically, but it's like a skill that you can't put value on. Like, I don't even think you could actually put value on it, you know, just going to try and figuring out. But like, in regards to like setting up your first couple meetings, having those conversations, me running those with you, like, what were some of the immediate takeaways that you learned? And what were some of the things that, you know, you may or may not have expected from those conversations initially?
Well, I'd say the biggest thing was, not as cliche, but like, don't judge a book by its cover. I remember one of the first meetings I set up, I think beforehand, I apologized to you and Rita. Hey man, like, I don't know if this one's going to be worth the time. I think it was on my fourth day, and it ended up being a very large buyer who was in the queue the next day. So that was a good lesson early on. Like, all right, if somebody wants to meet, have the conversation, it might not always go somewhere. It might not always go somewhere now, but it's always worth having that relationship. Like I said, everybody knows everybody. So, you know, even if it's a situation where maybe it's not a vertical we're particularly strong in at the moment, 6 months down the road, we might be booming. We've seen that with Mass Tort, right? 6 months ago, it's not like we were doing a ton of calls. Now we're doing probably close to 1,000 calls a day across the Mass Tort vertical. So those types of things can come up. So I'd say that, as cliche as it is, not prejudging or writing a company off or a client off because you don't think it might be a fit. And that was something I learned from you early on too. Even going into some meetings, 15 minutes in, I knew it wasn't a fit, but you kept it going, kept asking questions, learned as much as you could about them, and vice versa. And, you know, down the road, some of them we've done business with, and I'm sure we'll do business with some of those others.
Yeah.
So
it's not if, it's when.
Yeah,
it's
for
when.
sure.
You don't know when you're going to need somebody until you need them. And, this is a common thread across the whole industry. And what's so funny, Tom, is like when we first got started, we were trying to do business with everybody.
Yeah.
And we kind of made it known like, hey, we're here.
Yeah.
And, what was the craziest is like we would just get a call out of nowhere saying, hey, I need you guys to send me calls right now. I'm short, or something happened. And situations happen all the time, you guys, where you want to be that person that they know that they can call because they can depend on you to be able to deliver what they need. And that's an invaluable thing, Tom. So thank you for sharing that with us. Now, is there anything else that you want to share with the community? Let them know anything that you think would be helpful. Just imagine talking to yourself 6 months ago, what you wish you would have told or somebody would have told you.
Yeah, I mean, I wish I didn't go back and forth with you for 4 months before making the jump. I would have jumped sooner had I know what I know. But I would say if it's somebody watching this that's interested in brokering, whether you want to make a decent side income or replace your current income, it's a wonderful way to go. The upfront investment and risk is relatively low if done right, which is that's part of the course in the book and helping you understand how to do that correctly. And the upside is pretty good.
But let's be real, Tom. So like, definitely, like we could always say there's millions of dollars to be made here. Hands down, there's a lot of money to be made. But what were some of the things that caused you to kind of not take that jump initially, where we had to go back and forth for a while?
Yeah.
And, what were some of the things that were concerns in the back of your head?
Yeah.
That you wish you would have had answers for?
Yeah, I think, the one variable that regardless, it was some life circumstances. Obviously, a baby on the way
that's a big one.
Is something that was factoring in, and I was coming from a very corporate, stable job. And so my lack of understanding of this industry led me to not understand the stability. And that was more of, I don't know that ignorance is necessarily the fairest word for it, but in a sense, I just didn't know. So once we were able to dive in enough, and you really pulled back, let me under the hood. And once I started to see those things, I was like, oh, okay, not only is this extremely stable, but the upside is 10x what I've got where I'm at. And being relatively young, I figure this is the time to do it. In hindsight, joking aside, it would have, the course would have been really nice to go through, especially when I was brokering the calls prior. Like I was doing this on the side, brokering calls while, working a full-time gig. That would have been nice to have. But in hindsight, I'm happy it didn't work out and I ended up here.
Me too.
But knowing what I know now, with all the resources available to our brokers, I know for a fact it would have been a way different conversation if I blew that up. Yeah, I would say those are the main things. And coming from, just with the life circumstance, that was the biggest delay in making the jump.
And that's real. And you guys, we all have things going on in our lives that, guide us in one direction or another. And I want to let everybody know that nobody knows what's best for you other than you, like straight up. And I think that was one of the first things I told you, Tom, was, nobody knows what's best for you other than you. Yeah. And I didn't want to put any pressure on you, but boy, did I want to.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other piece of it too. Knowing you for as long as I have known you, knowing the type of person that you are, knowing that you fully understood my situation. Because actually the back and forth started before I found out I was having a kid.
Yeah.
And then once I told you that, it was almost more of like, all right, now you really got to do it.
Yeah.
So, that there's also that element of putting your trust in somebody. And obviously I know that work aside, friendship wise, you wouldn't put me in a position that wasn't the best for my family and I. And with baby 2 months out, I'm happier and happier that I made the move.
Well, I'm happy to have you, man. But you guys, that's all the time that we have. Tom, thank you so much for joining me, man. If you guys need to get connected with Tom, what's the best way to get connected with you, Tom?
Email, Skype, LinkedIn, any of those works.
All right, beautiful. Thank you, guys. We'll have that stuff drop down in the comments below. If you guys need anything, please don't hesitate to reach out. As always, thank you guys for listening. Talk to you guys later.